Hello and welcome to LevelUP. This is our Python series where Angus is going to teach you the basics of coding in Python. Enjoy!
Alright, good evening or good morning whenever you're watching this video. Welcome back to another tutorial in our Intro to Python series. So today we're gonna learn a new data structure today. We're gonna learn about lists. And lists allow us to store multiple pieces of information in a single variable. And we'll get onto that in a second, but quickly before we get into that, I just wanted to quickly show you something. They're called comments, and what comments allow us to do is just put some text in our Python file that allows us to just understand better what's going on. So I'm just going to show you an example here. So if you just press hashtag and then anything after here, we can type anything after here. We can just say welcome to the tutorial, and when the Python file runs, anything with a hashtag at the start of it is just ignored. So yeah, you can type whatever you want just to add some context to your code. So once we start getting really long files, it can be confusing to know what each part does. So we can just add some comments to add some more insightful information. So if you say print, hello world, we might add a comment that said welcome message or something like this. Maybe that we wouldn't really use it in this situation. This is a bit basic because we can kind of understand what's going on, but this is the sort of situation that we would use it in. And we can also add them at the end of the lines here, like hello, stuff like that. It's just anything in that line after a hashtag will just be ignored by the Python interpreter. You see, because if we were to type print here, it's still considered the comment, even though this is a function that we're familiar with. It's after the hashtag, so it's considered as part of the comment. But this one here this is before the hashtag in this line, so it's run by the interpreter. So that's just a quick little thing I thought I'd show you. I'm going to try use them throughout the projects, just to get you guys in the habit of using these in your own code. So now on to the main thing of this tutorial. We're going to be looking at lists, and these are, in my opinion, really cool. These allow us to store multiple types of data in a list, essentially. So imagine, I think the example I'm going to use throughout this will be like a shopping list. And on a shopping list, you store multiple items. You have what you're going to buy, obviously, on a shopping list. So we'll go with that. I'm going to create a list and then we'll talk through it. So we're going to create a variable first of all. So I'll just call mine shopping list, as a list. So we're familiar, we're creating a variable called shopping list, and then we're going to give it the value. And here we're going to use square brackets. So if you look towards the top right of your keyboard for square brackets, they look like that. And actually we've created a list. This technically is a list. So if we run this quickly, we see we get nothing out here, and we can print this. We can print shopping list here, and you'll see we just have our empty list here. So right now our list is empty. There's no values in it. All we've done is we've created a variable called shopping list, which is a list, which is what these square brackets mean. And what we want to do, if we can fill this list by just creating some more variables inside of these square brackets. So I'm going to create a few strings. Remember, strings are just fancy word for text. And on the shopping list, maybe I'd like some bacon or some toast and tomatoes. I really hope I spelled that correctly. But there we go. So what we've done here is we've now just filled this list with some strings. If I run this again, you can see, instead of it being empty, we now have a list filled with 3 items: bacon, toast, and tomatoes. So that's quite cool. We can also change these. We can make this as long as we want. We could add, lettuce or whatever. We could add loads of items here, as many as we wanted, or none, as we showed at the start. It can be empty if we want it to be empty. This could also be numbers. Remember, we've looked at storing integers, so I could store 0, I could store 10, I could store 50. Maybe this variable name now isn't the best. This isn't really a shopping list, but we could change that to just be anything. And this can store any values. But if we run this, you can see we get those displayed there: 0, 10, and 50, which is what we filled this list with. So I'm going to go quickly back to the shopping list example because I think it's a relatable topic. I'll just run again, what we expect out. And what we can do to we can access specific indexes. They're called indexes, yeah. Indexes of the list. And I'll show you what that means. So down here, if we go to line 3 where we've got our print shopping list, at the end of shopping list, so this is referencing the variable, remember, we're printing the entire list, we can get specific items at specific parts of the list. So I'm going to type square brackets and then 1. And what this does is says, we're going to reference the shopping list, get that, pull it in here, and we're going to print it. But then it sees this, and these square brackets say, let's access that at index 1. So I'm going to run this, and based on your knowledge that this will get a specific item in our list, which item do you think we'll see? Do you think we'll see bacon? Will we see toast? Or will we see tomatoes? So we'll run this. You can see we get toast. And now, if you remember back to our last episode where we covered for loops, you may remember that I said ranges start at 0, and that would be useful later. Well, this is why that's useful later, because list indexes start at 0. So technically, bacon is at index 0 of this list, toast is at index 1 of this list, and tomatoes are index 2 of this list. So if we want to access bacon from our shopping list, we just change that to be 0, we hit run, and we can see bacon's printed because we're accessing our shopping list variable at index 0, which would be bacon. So if we wanted to access tomatoes, have a quick shot. What index do you think we would put in here to access tomatoes? Okay, so it's index 2, so if we hit run now, and we get tomatoes. And I'll show you what happens if we type, say, an index that isn't in this list. So I'm just going to put 3, but we could put any number. It could be 33, 333, anything, because that doesn't exist. We'll hit run, and we see we get this error here, and it says index error, list index out of range. And this does, red text, it looks terrifying for your first time when you see it, but all this is saying is we've tried to access an item in the list that doesn't exist. So there we go, that's basics of lists. We can also mix and match types actually. We've learned about integers, so we could say 1, and we could say 20. So in this case, this list has a string and an integer and an integer. You won't really ever use this much, but Python's really relaxed with types. It really doesn't doesn't care if you're putting some integers in here. It's just better though if you use the same types because it makes performing logic on it down the road so much easier. So we'll just get rid of that there. Cool. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this line quickly here. And for next example, what if we want to add an item to this list? We can do that, no problem. So run a function essentially on this this variable. We can they're called like class variables. They're basically just magic methods that we can run on this. That's a bunch of jargon. I'm just going to show you how it works. So if we type shopping list, so we're referencing the variable, which is our list, and then there's a method associated with. If we then type dot append and then use open brackets, and we want to add, this is going to add something to our list to the end, append. I'm going to use quotations like this to say we want to create a string. And why don't we add bread? I mean, we've got toast and bread. Okay, this is getting like a confusing list now. But what this is going to do, it references shopping list, and this is just a magic, function that's just going to add another item to the end of our list. And we're going to take a new line here, and we're going to say print, and then we're just going to print shopping list. And now if you remember last time we said index 3, and when we ran that, well, if we look up here, index 3 didn't exist, so we got that index error. But now if we run that, you see we get bread printed out, because what this has done is it's added bread to the end of our list. So that's now an accessible index. So if I just delete that there, we create it with these items, bacon, toast and tomatoes, and then bacon, toast, tomatoes, and then you see bread is added onto the end there. And now this would be a great time to add comments in if you ever want to come back to this code and you're not quite sure what this append means. What we can do is we can just add a function that's add a comment, sorry, that says adds bread oops, there, to the end of the shopping list. So we can go. We can just basically describe what this line is doing here. So we understand it when we come back in future and look at this code that that's what this is doing. We can also, yes, I'm just going to comment this code out. If we just press this is a good way. If you don't want to delete codes, but you know you want to just keep it in case you want to use it later, just comment it out like that. So you know we've got the code there, but we can go back to it. But it's not going to run because it's commented out, remember? We can also remove items from our list by doing shopping list. And then if we do .pop, so same kind of syntax as append, we're doing the variable name, which is or the list, and then dot, and then a magic function name. So we'll do .pop. And what this will do, this doesn't take anything inside its brackets, just this. And what this will do is just remove the last item from our list. So it will remove tomatoes in this case. So if we were to run this, you can see we get bacon and toast. And then of course if we were to index it 2, you know the first time when we index 2 it would get us tomatoes. But because this is popping it, you see we get an index error because it's been removed and index 2 then doesn't exist. The list looks like that and there's no index 2 there, so we can't access it. Of course then might want to add another comment here just so we understand what this means in future. It says removes the last item of the list. Awesome. I'm just going to comment that out like that. Oh, excuse me. I'll just delete that there. We can also okay, so we're going to link this now into, if you remember from our last episode, we used for loops. And for loops are great for lists. They allow us to really easily iterate over every single item in a list. So, first method we're going to learn that will build us up to that. We can get the length of a list. So what we'll just do here is we'll type print, and then similarly from our second tutorial where we got inputs from the user, we can you'll be familiar when we converted like integer or strings, sorry, to integers. We did int, and then we typed our input like that. We were converting something like this. We can actually use another function in Python that's built in called len. So if you type len and then open bracket and then shopping list, make sure you get all your brackets correctly here. So this print, we have our open bracket out here, and then this is going to print the length, open bracket here and here surrounding shopping list. This will print the length of our shopping list, which in our case will be 3. We've got 3 items in here, 3. So what this just does, this is just another function that's the people who created Python have already coded for us, and it just gets the length, the number of items in this list for us. Okay, so with this we can now do our for loops again. So if you remember from the last tutorial, to create a for loop, we're going to start by taking for, and then we're going to create a variable here. This is, I'm just going to call it I, but because this is just a variable, it can be called anything you want, as long as it's not a reserved word like print or len, like we've just seen. And then in range, whoops, and remember we just showed you how to do the len, so we'll do len and then of shopping list. And remember our colon at the end, and then take a new line, and we'll make sure this is tabbed. So if you remember for, so this is our fixed loop, which means it's going to iterate over every item in, it's going to run a certain number of times. So I'm just going to, print, I will just print the item. And if you remember, to index an item, we need to give it an index. Okay. So if we'll just type shopping list, and then if we use our square brackets, we're going to say we're going to index it at, and then we need to give it a value here. And if you remember from last tutorial with for loops, this this variable here, we could call it whatever. We could call it vegetable. I butchered that spelling. Vegetable. We could call it whatever we want to call it, but I'm just going to call it I, short for index. This stores what iteration of the loop we're on. So if we just type in I here, it'll go 0, 1, 2. So if we run this now, you can see we get, we see bacon, toast, tomatoes, because it's gone over each item in the list. And this variable, I'll print out the variable as well. We'll just print out I, and you remember it goes, we're printing I and then the shopping list item, so we print 0, then we print 1, and then we print 2, because it's storing the iteration of the loop we go in. And this goes up to not including, so if you remember, this length function returned 3, but this isn't returning a 3 value here, because it essentially goes up to but not including 3, so it goes from 0, 1, 2, but not 3. Say the length was 7, it would go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, like that, but not 7. Awesome, so we've just learned, we've done a whole bunch here. That's really awesome. So we've learned, we've created our list, and we've put some data into our list. We've added some data to the end of the list by using the append function. We've removed the last item of a list using pop, and then we've been able to index. Well, that's just a fancy word for getting data at an index. Indexing a list by giving it an index. And then we've printed. We've iterated over loops. We save the index by using for loops, which this is a really good use for for loops. If you were confused as to why we would use them in the last episode, this is why we would use them. We do for I in range. We get the length of the shopping list, and then we can index it by just calling a variable in here and printing it. So that's awesome. We've learned a lot about lists and even learned some things about comments as well, which is amazing. So that's going to be it for this video. In the next one, we're going to start a project using lists and adding to what we've learned so far, and really put all this newfound knowledge into use and give you some practical uses. I know when I'm learning, I like to know how we would actually use stuff. So if that's how you learn as well, then that'll be really good. So have a wee practice with these. Create some lists, add some values, remove some values, print them all out, and then we'll see you in the next video. Bye!
That's it for this video. Check out our channels for some more tutorials from Angus on Python. Join us next time. Bye!